Let's turn now to Ohio, where Court TV crime and justice correspondent Joy Lim-Nakrin joins us live tonight with the latest in what's happening in the Pike County massacre. What can you tell us, Joy?
So, Vinny, starting tomorrow, the jury will begin deliberating, and we will be on verdict watch in this case. The day ended with jury instructions, the jury instructions being 150 pages, the judge spending hours going through those. The day actually started with the defense closing arguments. Remember, yesterday we heard closing arguments from the state. The defense really reiterating their overarching argument that even though the state is claiming that the Wagners kind of acted as a unit, that it was all for one for all, that in fact George Wagner is an individual and he should not be made to pay for the sins of his family. Let's listen to part of defense closing by John Parker.
The state in this case that you have seen with respect to George paints with a very, very broad brush. All right, how many times have we heard they, them, you guys, the Wagners, all right? George is the one that's about trial here, all right? We are not here to defend Billy. We are not here to defend Angela. We're certainly not here to defend Jake, all right? And basically, I mean, there were days and days that went by when you didn't hear George's name, and that's significant.
So just a reminder, Jake Wagner, the defendant's brother, already pleaded guilty to his role in the crimes. He admitted to killing 5 of the 8 victims and shooting a 6th one. Angela Wagner, the mother of the defendant here, also pleaded guilty to conspiracy and other charges. And the defendant's father, Billy Wagner, Billy Wagner, is set to stand trial. Well, initially was planned for later this year, but at this rate, likely in 2023. But so far, throughout this trial, we have not heard testimony or even the assertion that George was the triggerman in this case.
And he's a member of this family. So as we sit here tonight, and you know, his mother and brother pled guilty already. Are they the key witnesses against him? Are they the only ones who can say, hey, he was part of this whole plan?
So they certainly are considered star witnesses, but it's a bit problematic. The defense has pointed to Jake Wagner's own testimony that George did not intend to kill anyone on the night in question and that he didn't actually pull the trigger on the night in question. But the state here is going with a complicity theory, and they're really trying to kind of, you know, during rebuttal especially, spell out for the jury that it doesn't matter if George was the triggerman. In the state of Ohio, if he was involved in the planning and preparation of those murders, then in fact he can be found guilty of murder. Let's listen to part of that rebuttal from the state.
The concept of complicity works in Ohio is that if 2 or more people set out to achieve a criminal purpose, a criminal goal, with one doing one part and others doing the other part, then each one of them is individually guilty as if they were the principal offender. That's the law. That's how it works.
Yeah, so Andy Wilson delivering that rebuttal closing for the state and really trying to explain complicity. Certainly, you know, that does seem to indicate that the state is aware potentially the fact that George wasn't the triggerman in this case may be problematic for them. Interesting to note that the state spent 4.5 hours yesterday delivering closing arguments, and then the defense spent less than 2 hours delivering theirs. And then the rebuttal lasted about 90 minutes. And, you know, just kind of looking at the bulk of the trial, we're now 13 weeks in, and the state presented 50 witnesses while the defense had 10. This trial has certainly gone on longer than expected.
It's been a long one. And did the jury, what time do they begin deliberations, or did they start already?
They have not yet started deliberations, and that's something that we had been watching for this afternoon. Ultimately, by the time the judge got through jury instructions, the decision was made to just go ahead and begin deliberations in the morning because it was well after 5 o'clock. So deliberations are going to begin at around 8:30. The judge has made it clear that the jury can kind of set their own schedule. They can deliberate as long as they like. This jury has heard weeks and weeks of testimony and seen just a mountain of evidence that certainly will have a lot to consider.
It's not an easy one. Never is. Joy Lim Nakrin live tonight in Ohio. Thanks so much, Joy. I'm sure we'll be speaking again this week as that jury continues those deliberations. All right, let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight in Los Angeles, California, Deputy Public Defender, L.A. County, Philip Dubé. In West Palm Beach, Florida, former police lieutenant, trial attorney Rick King. And in Los Angeles, California, criminal defense attorney Lara Uretzian. Great to see everyone tonight. Let's talk about Ohio, okay? Because the jury's going to begin deliberating in the morning. It just seems that this defendant, Philip, he's in a bad family. I think we can all agree to that. You've got his brother and mother admitting to their roles in planning and plotting the massacre of a rival family. Wow. Do you think this jury will say, oh, that's okay, but this brother clearly wasn't involved? Does he get rolled up as being a member of this really bad family, or can he separate himself from his brother and his mother and the rest of the crew?
Well, I'm hardly the great Karnak, Vinny, but I just have a feeling that the worst case scenario for George Wagner is a deadlocked jury. I'd be very, very surprised if a jury convicts him of 8 counts of murder. And the reason why is he has one thing going for him, and that is Ohio law. If his version of events are to be sold to this jury, he is really saying at most he is an accessory after the fact. And accessories after the fact are not criminalized in the state of Ohio. Under the law of complicity, in order for a jury to convict, you have to actually be an actual killer, a direct perpetrator, an aider and abetter, or a co-conspirator, meaning you're in on an agreement with at least one other person to kill one or more persons. And I think what they have here maybe is just his knowledge of this plot, maybe even his presence, his familiarity with it, and his association with others who are in on it. But I think the evidence falls short of proof beyond a reasonable doubt that he was in fact complicit before the fact. I think they're going to have a real hard time, and I think the state may be facing a retrial or perhaps a not guilty. And one other thing, I thought he was fantastic on the stand. He was a gentleman, a class act. He looked terrific, and he was well coached, if you will, for his testimony.
Rick, you're smiling. What's going on?
I think he did great on the stand. I'm not going to deny that. However, I think that, and I disagree with you a little bit in the sense that when you talk about complicity, you talk about an accomplice. And there was testimony from his brother that he was in the car. He went to the scenes. He was there. I think in Florida, conspiracy we talk about, in for a penny, in for a pound. I think he's in for a bunch of pennies. And I think you're going to find that the jury in Ohio is going to find that he's complicit in this crime.
Lara, here's the other part of this. This is like an incredibly notorious case. This was a massacre, a slaughter of an entire family. Is that, to me, I would think that as a juror, you've got the weight of the crime that you're carrying, as well as trying to hold someone responsible. So does that factor into how this jury sees the evidence and sees his role in his family?
It shouldn't factor into it, but we all know that jurors are human beings, and that's going to be in the back of their minds, and that's not going to be helpful to George Wagner and that's exactly what the prosecution is relying on, and that's fully their argument. I mean, he's part of this family, and look at this heinous crime that they all committed. He's with them. His brother puts him at the scene. And there's plenty here for the jury to ignore and just let this guy walk. I agree with Rick. I think this is going to be a tough one. I think he's going to get convicted. Maybe he won't get convicted of everything, but he's going to get convicted of a substantial number of counts here.
And Phil, we can't forget, like, his mother came into court. His own mother. To me,
His mother and his brother.
so
Look.
how does the jury just look at that and say, like, what mother would come in and lie to the jury to make sure her son was convicted of a crime?
Ma Barker, okay, the Svengali type, the one who holds sway over the whole family. Are you kidding? Even the father would come in to save their own hide. Look, they were facing the needle there. They would get on that stand and throw their own children under the bus to avoid the needle. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me. You know, what's the old adage? Crimes conceived in hell don't have angels and witnesses, and that includes mom. It does. So no, that does not surprise me at all, and that does not move the needle, no pun intended, in favor of mom.
And Rick, finally, jury deliberations start tomorrow. This was a long, long trial. I have my own little formula for what an average deliberation is based upon trial time, et cetera. But what are you expecting here? Is this one that is super complicated, or does it come down to a jury just going in and say, did we believe him at all when he testified, and did we believe his brother?
The whole thing is about believability. And if I can just segue on something that you said a moment ago, and in a colloquialism, his mama came and testified against him. I don't think that jury is going to be out for very long. I feel like when your mama come and testify against you, I think that the jury's going to be. I think they're going to feel that, and I think he's going to go down rather quickly.
All right, we shall see. We shall see. Again, the Verdict Watch continues on Court TV tomorrow. Make sure you tune in first thing, because verdicts can happen at any moment. It could take 5 minutes, could take 5 weeks. We just don't know.